I just started recording and now I'm going to start streaming here. So, let's see here. Alright, it says it's connected, so let's just reload and get this stuff going. And, alright, let's hold up here.
I'm fine. That's Radaman Pong.
Alrighty.
Favorite movies, right? That's what it is.
Yeah, that's what we're doing tonight.
Okay.
Okay, so audio's going through to Twitch, which is good. And, now we can actually focus on some stuff. So, ah, all right. That's not what I wanted. All right, whatever. It'll be fine. All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Lost in the Ether. You're joined with me, Spencer, along with my friend Eric tonight. And
Hello.
this is our first time streaming on Twitch, and it's going to
Yay.
be an interesting little event tonight. Yay! Yeah. So, we're just going to try to make sure the stream's going well and everything, but while we're doing that, we're going to be talking about our favorite movies tonight. And I'll drop myself a follow there. So I'm gonna let Eric go first on that. So Eric, what are your favorite movies? Movies specifically, if there's a top one, and then we can probably get into like franchises after that. So I'll let you have the floor.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you, Spence. My number one all-time favorite film would have to be 1917. That is my favorite film.
Wait, is that the World War II one? World War One?
Yeah, correct.
The one in that's supposedly filmed as like one single shot or one single scene.
Yeah, it was up for Best Picture. It won Best Cinematography. Best visual? I think best visual effects, best soundtrack, things like that. It was up for I think 10 Academy Awards at least. I've seen it about at least 6 times, and I just love the story and how a young, really young teenager goes into war and has to, pretty much the moral of the story is he has to, without spoiling anything, he pretty much is tasked with delivering a message to the front lines of the war, and he has to deliver it to a colonel, and just the whole journey takes him and his other partner along this huge journey into enemy territory, and he has to literally battle and kill different soldiers and different things like that. So it's a huge, yeah, it's an amazing story. Just with him, I thought not only the story was good, but the way they just the cinematography of how they really capture and kind of pull you into his struggles as a character and the different intensities of war and how it how it is ultimately hell. So it's a brutal film as far as just war goes, but it is just on the edge of your seat from the moment from about, I'd say, 15 minutes into when it ends. So it's my favorite. Every time it's on Showtime, every time it's on, I have the DVD. It's just, every time I watch it, it's just and I think that's for everybody. It's whenever you've watch a film over and over and over, you start to see things you didn't see before. So that's my number one film. So I would encourage anybody that is into those type of war films, like Saving Private Ryan. Band of Brothers was a series, but it's on the same lines. Hacksaw Ridge, things like that. It's films like that. It's at least right up there. I would say my second favorite film is Elysium. That's kind of more on the science fiction side of a. It's really it's kind of a I wouldn't say it's a political film. It stars Jodie Foster and Matt Damon, and I can't remember the guy's name who's in Rogue One. He's the main like the I don't know the co-actor with the main female in there. But so Elysium is a film of pretty much there's a space station out probably just orbiting Earth, and where pretty much all the rich people live, and what it is kind of a controlled society where they keep the disease and poor poverty type citizens and I guess population on Earth, and all the rich people live in this nice luxurious space station that is just orbits Earth, and they take people up every now and then on these cargo shuttles, but you have to be rich in order to do it. You have to afford a pretty much a ride up there, and Matt Damon pretty much, in other words, he cheats the system and tries to figure out a way to get up there and try to give the space station literally back to the people. So it's kind of a revolutionary type film, and also revolution type way of going about it as well, trying to start a revolution and give everything back to the people. So that's my second favorite film. My third is Interstellar. That stars Matthew McConaughey.
Matthew McConaughey.
Yeah. I'm blanking on the other name. Matt Damon as well is in it.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure everyone has seen Interstellar at this point.
Yeah, I know. I was trying to name off actors and actresses, but So that's my third favorite film as well. I love the soundtrack to that. It's amazing. I love the soundtrack. Yeah, that's kind of my top three. I was kind of looking forward to this podcast. Kind of talking about 1917 and all that, but I think that's all I have with my top films.
Alright. Hold on, something's... Alright. Hold on, something's... I got an echo on you here. So I don't know what's... I got an echo on you here. So I don't know what's...
I don't hear anything.
We're still good.
Okay.
But we're good now. I'm not hearing it.
Okay. Those are my top films. So.
Yeah, those are very you films.
Yes, it is. I mean, if anybody knew me the way they do, like you and just close friends, you would know that pretty much isn't a surprise.
Though, I am surprised that your favorite movie was
1917.
Yeah, because I know that's something that both of us were really liked, but I didn't think that was the top movie of yours. I would guess something like Interstellar was your one, since you talk about it all the time. Kind of like how Horizon Zero Dawn is your favorite video game.
Mm-hmm.
Because you talk about it all the time, but in reality, you play simulators far more than you play that game.
Yeah, I do. And plus, I mean, unfortunately, it can't run on my PC for some reason. So that's one thing. I've tried everything. I've tried going through Gorilla's whole technical thing of updating my GPU.
Okay. Well, no, I mean, they launched an actual update, I believe, to fix that problem. So maybe you have to just
When
reinstall it now.
do you know when that update
No
happened?
idea.
Okay,
One of the guys I worked with told me about it. So if it's true or not,
okay,
I don't know. But
okay,
that's what the situation is as far as I understand it.
okay. But yeah, getting back to films, that's yeah. It is a really I mean, it's a gory film. Not as it's not a strong,
It has the
but
acceptable amount of gore for
yeah,
what it is because it's
I
not
would,
like
yeah, I would say Hacksaw is a little more. Hacksaw is that is pretty much I think what it looks like, at least back then. Um, but and I know,
I actually didn't think Hacksaw was that. So like Hacksaw as a movie, I think is fine, but like Hacksaw as like an actual like representation was not that great.
yeah, I thought the visual effects as far as the
It looked too what's the right way of saying this?
predictable.
Yes, but not really what I'm going for. So like 1917 is really realistic. So
Hmm.
it has an immersion to it that makes me feel like I'm right there in the film. Whereas
Hmm.
Hacksaw Ridge, I just there's something about the way that they filmed that movie that really makes me not like my I can't get immersed into the film, really.
Mm.
So like I don't know if it's something with the lighting, I don't know if it's how they filmed it, I don't know if it's the angles that they're using, but there's something about that style of how they made that film. And it's kind of common with a lot of Christian films in general. Where
Hmm.
like there's this certain like style that they make it that makes me just get turned off visually from the
Hmm.
movie. It's almost
Yeah.
like a it's like a problem with it, High School Musical esque kind of vibe, if that
Mm.
makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. Where it's kind of the yeah. I kind of
Like a
understand what you're
cheap,
talking about.
not even like a cheap look, but like that sort of like cinematography that I don't care for at all.
Mm.
That really throws me out of those kinds of films. And I don't know, maybe it's just because they have low budget, so they have to use a certain kind of film or something like that that does that.
Yeah, I mean, it was Mel Gibson, so I don't think it would like it's not like a I mean, there was a big budget for that film and you had a really good actor in the film, so with Andrew Garfield, so it's not like you got some schmo that you
Well,
don't
then
know.
it's got to be some kind of style something because, like, and again, I'm not saying Hacksaw Ridge is a bad movie. It's just for some reason, whenever I watch films that are that kind of story,
Mm-hmm.
it's something about the film itself, how it's made, just really turns me off.
Mm,
I watch it, and I'm just like, I don't want to look at this,
yeah.
if that
Ha-
makes
did
sense.
have you only seen 1917 once?
Well, I saw it in theaters,
Okay.
so
Okay.
I saw
Yeah,
it in
I
theaters,
never.
and I think I saw it one more time after that. I
Okay.
remember it. I actually really remember that movie vividly because, like, I remember the actors that went through it. I remember the whole big plot points, the
Yeah.
historical things that I knew offhand. So, like,
Yeah.
I remember that. I remember 1917 very vividly, and what I really appreciated about that movie was this. I don't know. Number one, they have the best British actors in it, so I
Yep.
always
Yep.
appreciate that. But also the whole movie. So 1917 isn't for people who don't know. 1917 isn't exactly a based on true story film. What it is that it's an
Right.
amalgamation of all the stories that the person that it's based on had. So
Right. Right.
the
And
the
yeah.
whole like going into a German bunker that they have, that was a separate story as opposed to him actually running through
Right.
trenches. So it's an amalgamation of his whole experience in World War One. But what really made it work, I think, was this idea of just the sheer honesty of what they're
Mm-hmm.
dealing with in the war. They didn't go into I so the only thing that I think that they missed out on in showing that, I don't know if this, and maybe it's because this soldier himself didn't experience it, but in World War One, like serious tear gassing was a
Mm-hmm.
thing, and I don't remember ever seeing that in the movie. I
No.
saw it in
No.
Tolkien.
I no. I can tell you that right now. I've seen it at least 6 times, and I've never seen that. And I've watched literally to from the beginning to. Yeah. I mean, I think I've I've watched I've watched all of it pretty much. I mean, I may have missed the first 10 minutes, but I know I've seen the first 10 minutes somewhere again when I watch it again and it starts. So I've seen, I can piece it all together. But as far as that goes, yeah, that's something I didn't point out before, is that that character is fictional. That name, that whole thing is fictional, but it's based on stories from everybody else, like you said. Like, you're exactly correct, where it's based on different people and the stories they've heard. So, and it kind of, that's the thing that I'm kind of turned off about it at the end of it, where they show, you know oh, this is, and they all the, what is it, the credits and different things, and they show like it was, oh, who told us the stories, and it's like, well, even though it's short and sweet, you kind of, you have to then go online to find this research out of, like, okay, well, it's not based on just one dude, because that's what you get from that overall type of, you know little sentence or two at the end of the film, is like, I originally thought that it was a true story. That, I mean, I know it's a true story, but this that the guy's name was that was the main name,
No, that
everything
the
was
guy
real,
is real. The person, the individual soldier is real. His like
right,
he has his descendants who helped made the film, but it's sort of what happened with Band of Brothers, where they had to condense everything down to just a few characters, and
right,
the whole company where all these stories happening, they attributed to people who weren't even there, mainly for the sake of filming and convenience, because it's one of those, it's the limitation of the medium is what we're dealing with. So
right, yeah,
the movie is, because you're dead right that yes, it's not all of his stories necessarily, but he heard them, he was there for them, he
right,
saw it
exactly, yeah,
personally. So
yeah,
it's based on true stories, but they're trying to combine it all in a way where you can experience it and really understand what the purpose of these stories really are,
right,
because you can't the problem with medium and film in general, whether it be TV, movies, or even long episodic series, is that you can still only communicate so much through visuals and audio. So they have to try to condense that as much as possible to keep your interest, number one, because if they go on tangents like real life, then there's nothing that's going to happen.
right,
So to me, it makes perfect sense why they did that, and I agree that that's what they should have done. But yeah, it's not it it what they should be doing is trying to clarify who did what and when
right,
in that research.
yeah.
So I don't know how in depth they were on that, but did they explain like, okay, here's a timeline, etc., or something like that, or was it just legit random stories?
It was, well, I would say, I mean, it's legit stories, and they're probably sequenced in there and set up in a certain way that they try to create a whole story around it. But at the same time, what my thing is, at the end, it was those, just explaining that it was a true story, and this person who told us the stories was there, but they didn't go into specifics of, hey, this is it's stories made up of, that he heard, but also of different people that experienced it. So I don't know, I mean, they kind of said it in a subtle way, that he was there and he heard the stories, but at the same time they didn't really say, how many
Well,
people, maybe,
they don't have to though. That's the thing.
right.
So
I mean, that's just my opinion. But
hey,
it's,
fair,
you
but
know
it's we're dealing with just limitations of technology.
right, yeah, I mean, but I thought I think my favorite part in that whole film was, I mean, there's so many of them. I mean, when he kind of jumps, and I don't know if you remember this. I mean, you remember a lot of it. So,
Yeah, I
he's
memorized that
kind of,
movie
yeah.
almost.
So he's running away. After he finds that one young girl who has the baby. He
Right, in the
stays in there
French
for a little bit.
ruins. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And in a way, I really wanted him to stay there, but you have to remember, it's like, wait, he's on a mission. He can't stay. But at the same time, he left that, and then then he was found out by those two people, and it's just that battle that he has to take and kill that one dude where the other dude's drunk and hurling, and just that whole sequence of just on the edge of your seat, and then he's running away in the dark, and he literally jumps and leaps into the river, and just literally just a waterfall, and literally had him just carry down to the shore. That was probably the best cinematography some of the best I've ever seen, where it's literally he's
I
at
do
the
call on the
end.
question of the actual waterfall, though.
Right, exactly,
Like
because
we're
I
not
mean,
dealing in like anywhere close to where mountains are in this part of
right,
World War One.
but still, it's like him jumping in there would the I don't know, the height of that jump, how high it was. It's like you'd literally, I mean, it's like smacking concrete, and he's fine. So it's a little bit of a, okay, that's not as realistic. You have
Well,
to
I
be
mean,
someone,
it's the difference between feeling it and what it looks like.
right.
So
So
like he might be in pain, but like you can't really show that he's in pain if he's underwater.
right, and I know he has adrenaline pumping, so that's
Yeah.
also the big thing. But when he gets to the end of that little, um, I don't know, the reservoir, whatever it is, where it just and all these dead bodies are collecting, and he's just having to make his way over those bodies, and the camera just pans over those bodies, and it's such an
Well,
amazing, just, I don't know,
it was a good
just
way.
scene.
We can go through this whole film and have this kind of discussion, which we might do in a later stream. But the whole film is designed to sort of showcase the different aspects of World War One that was going on, which is why I'm surprised they didn't have any tear gas into it because that was like a
Right,
huge factor. But
yeah, I
so
didn't
the
know that.
civilian
I
bodies that
didn't.
they were doing, it's like people really don't understand. Modern day people really don't have a grasp on how actually terrifyingly horrible World War One and by extension World War Two actually was to the common
Right,
person in those countries. So
right,
you had and All Quiet on the Western Front is I think another film people should see when we're talking about stuff like this, is that you really need to understand that these people, both from France to Germany to all these places where the fighting was actually happening, like this was their homes, and they were dealing
yep,
with starvation, homelessness,
hmm,
frozen winters, all this kind of stuff. Like the war was not this whole honorable challenge that happened. It started out that way, but
hmm,
very quickly things went really downhill for the populace. And what you saw was things like, yeah, people did starve and die in massive
right,
amounts of population. So when you see him crawling over those bodies, I think that's really over dramatized to some extent. I'm not saying that stuff didn't happen because I'm pretty sure there's
right,
somewhere saying showing documentation of similar events. But
yeah,
what I and that's why I mentioned All Quiet on the Western Front is that you had the local populace interacting with the German troops, trying to get food from them,
mm,
and
mm,
so that I think that it was probably a far more accurate representation of what was going on, because and you even saw this in Warhorse is that a lot of
oh
people
yeah,
were even killed by their own side accidentally
yeah,
and on purpose.
mhm,
So it's just like to go into to showcase part of that in just a couple seconds really shows how much this movie pays attention to the small details. And we can have a whole stream about this later on, but
yeah,
definitely I can definitely understand why people from a very technical perspective love this movie.
hmm,
And it's
yeah,
definitely worth even watching again right now,
right.
but we'll have to do something like that later.
Right.
We
Yeah.
can't
Yeah. I
if
was just.
we'll keep talking about
Yeah.
this all night if we keep going.
Yeah. I just wanted to point out at least one of my favorite parts of just how realistic that felt to me. Of just like, whoa, that's like really eerie. And
Yeah.
then the song and everything that
Oh, that was my
the
favorite part of the film
that
when he's
yeah,
sitting
mine
down in the
too. Yeah.
tree and they're
Yeah.
singing that
That
song.
was
That was it's
yeah. That was
it's so
real.
I don't even know what the word is, cathartic or something
Yeah,
like that.
it's just that's one of my favorite parts in the film. It's not my favorite, but I love that song. That's like it's in the soundtrack. I love it. I saw the live recording of the guy in the studio do it on YouTube. Um, but my point is, it's just it's amazing how he just sits down on that tree and he just kind of just rests there. And it's the first time in the entire film where he's just like, no one's killing me. No one's trying to,
I legit
come
thought
after.
he died for a
Yeah,
second.
I thought so too. I
That's
thought,
that's
yeah,
how well
first,
shot that was because of how they panned it around
right. I
and
thought, yeah,
made you not see
I
his
thought he died.
face. Really made you
Yeah,
develop this sort of weird, calm suspense at the same time. Like
yeah,
he's at
because
peace, but is he still alive?
right, because he's just sitting there not saying anything. His eyes are just not even. He's not even blinking. So it's that part, and it's the end when he's on the other tree at the end, where he's just looking at his photos and everything. But my point is, it's just, if you haven't seen it, you need to see it. But that's all I'll say. I can
Yeah.
go on. I mean, we can go on and on, but I want to hear
We'll
yours.
have
So
a devoted stream to this one day, and just go
yeah.
into it.
But anyways, so I'm done.
We're good. So I am not that much of a movie buff, contrary to what we just talked about.
Yes, that's surprising.
But because it's not a medium I care for too much, and it's not that I don't think it has its art or its quality, but it's not something that I generally go out of my way for. So like I prefer literature, gaming, and more. I don't know. I like documentaries when it comes to this kind of stuff, which is why I love World War II films because it's like you get to see all the stuff you've learned in the film. But I have to say I'm actually going to take a whole left field turn here, and so I I don't have a favorite movie, but I will say there's one movie that will always live sort of rent free in my head,
Hmm.
and that's going to be, at least for right now, is going to be The Emperor's New Groove.
Wow, that is a. I didn't think you'd pick an animated film.
Well, I love animated films, but it's one of those things where like The Emperor's New Groove, the only there's a very few films that beat that movie to me as far as like, oh, what references do I immediately come to my head? All
Hmm.
the kind of stuff. Because you can't sit down and watch Emperor's New Groove and not have a good time. All right, there's always something in that movie that makes you chuckle, makes you laugh. There's so many memes that come from that movie that people don't even remember that are still
Hmm.
used today. And on top of that, you have the comedy cast of comedians as voice actors. You have the whole weirdness of this because I honestly do think that like Emperor's New Groove was sort of a response to El Dorado by Disney because they sort of share this whole third wall, breaking the fourth wall kind of thing in their movies, and they're both in South American civilizations.
Hmm.
So, and El Dorado is one of my favorite movies too. He's like right. Honestly, it's more of a tie between those films. I don't really like one more than the other.
Hmm.
But the reason why I choose Emperor's New Groove is because that's more of a actual party movie, if that makes sense. Because like the last time I have this fond memory of when it was around this time of the year back when I was still part of my youth group in college, where we sat down and we watched this movie for a Christmas marathon for some strange reason. We were just like, oh, what's a random movie? And I'm just like, well, why don't we just put in Emperor's New Groove? Everyone loves that movie. And the amount of fun that we had that night because that movie was introduced permanently solidified that as one of my favorite movies ever. Like Deserted Island, how many movies do I get? Okay,
Yeah.
that's one of them. All right, if I was to preserve something for future generations, book, Bible, movie, Emperor's New Groove, show, Frasier. That's it. We'll get into shows at some point too, but and it's perfect and it's comedic timing to me. It's this almost weird dry humor, but also not dry humor at the same time.
Hmm.
And the characters are all memorable. The characters are all personalities that really mesh well together. Krunk and Yzma are my favorite villain duo, even though they're not really like a villain duo, because Krunk's not even really a bad guy.
Hmm.
And it's just that the entire movie just speaks to my sense of humor. Like
Mm.
if I was to make a movie, it would look a lot like that.
Uh,
So that is.
Lighthearted.
Oh yeah, I would not be making. Well, that's not say that, but like my first instinct for a movie is to be entertaining, not to be anything else. You can have serious movies, and I do love serious movies. So, like, for instance, 1917 is one of my favorite World War II movies, but I still think Saving Private Ryan is still the better movie.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I've seen Private Ryan so many times, but it's not, and that is a great movie. But I don't know. It's you know how some films you just connect with. I just connected with
Yeah.
1917
Well, it's just
more than
like it's
you
just
know.
like with our Christmas podcast in last episode is
Yeah,
that like so Klaus, best Christmas
yeah,
movie to me. No one cares about it.
yeah.
It doesn't. It
Unfortunately,
doesn't.
like I'll have to see it because I feel like that's a film
You will
that I would
love this
enjoy
film,
it.
Eric. Just
Um,
just you as being an appreciator of this art form will
yeah.
really love this film. Also, Norm Macdonald's in it. It's one of his last roles before he died.
Mm,
So definitely needs to be watched just from that alone. But also,
hmm
it's a good Christmas movie, and it really needs more attention than
But
what it got.
I mean, just like you said though before, like you said, you know, Christmas Story. I watched that now. I've watched it at least 3, 4 times now, and it's
About
my
time.
favorite now. Yeah, but it's
Yeah.
my, it's like I don't know. It's just I just love it. But anyways, but my point is, it's that type of stuff that you just connect with and different things like that. So I understand that. I've never really I haven't seen Emperor's New Groove in a long time. I mean,
Oh,
a
dude,
long
it's worth the
time.
rewatch.
I mean, I
Just.
have Disney Plus, so I'm pretty sure it's on there.
Oh, it's on there.
Yeah,
Sit down, rewatch it, and then you'll understand why I love this movie so much.
yeah. I mean, we can. I think I would like to at some point maybe just have a whole podcast of just animated films, from a certain studio, as far as make that a podcast. But anyways, that's aside from the point. But
Well, well. So what we can do, we'll talk about this later on. But what we can do is that when we're a little bit more established, we can actually make more in-depth videos like that aren't streams like this, and just go down the tier list properly.
hmm yeah.
But we so Emperor's New Groove is probably my top favorite movie, but so my second and thirds are really more of just like franchises. So my
mm
second is all the Lord of the Rings movies. All right.
Oh
Not the
yeah.
Hobbit movies, the Lord of the Rings movies. All right. Those movies will always have a special place in my heart.
Which one out of those three?
So the one that I enjoy watching the most is Return of the King.
Mm.
But and the reason why is because the first two films are more what's the right way of saying this? They're
Setting up.
yes, they're context, and that's not bad. I'm not thinking that they're bad movies at all. The Fellowship of the Ring is probably the most important movie out of all three of them.
hmm
But it's just for me, it's like it's a lot of talk. It's not a lot of
Right.
interesting things happening, and that's
Right.
fine. I'm not criticizing it, but it's not something that I personally enjoy. Whereas Return of the King, it's all of this stuff going on all of the time, and I'm right dead waiting for what's going to happen next. So
Right, right, and it's like there's at least what there's at least I think there's what four different things going on at once where you're okay, we're here with this character, we're here with
yeah,
we're here with Theoden, we're here with boom boom boom
yeah.
everybody, and it's
And
just
Faramir is best boy, and I don't care who wants to argue with me on that. All right, Faramir
yeah
is the best character in both in the books and in Lord of the Rings movies. He's just the best character. Aragon is sort of like this. I don't know. He's sort of this messianic figure.
yeah
So
yeah
like
I
I
agree,
can't. So
the
it's not like
chosen type, to
yeah.
lead, yeah.
So and the thing about this is he's the reluctant one, and so they go through that whole plot, and that's not a bad plot. I actually really enjoy that aspect of it. But like I can't get into Aragon the same way I can get into
I
Faramir because Faramir
I
is
can't
like
either.
Well, number one, I'm actually a younger brother, so there's a lot of perspective there that I sympathize with. Just like when in the show Frasier, Niles is my favorite character because I actually go through a lot of things that Niles
Mm.
has gone through, not only as a younger brother but as an adult. So
I mean, just a quick note on that. I also thought he actually should have gotten an Emmy for his performance because he's at least my favorite character in the whole thing. So I mean, but that's beside the point. I just wanted to make that
yeah,
statement because I sympathize with you there.
yeah. So, and it's just like his Faramir is, I don't know, his entire story speaks to me more than a lot of the other characters,
Yeah, and I
and
feel like he's not accepted as much as his. It seems like he, at least in the what the.
the broader community.
Yeah, just the, yeah, just in that whole with his father and everything, where he's up on the top of when Smeagol, he's down on the river and he's like, hitting the fish or whatever. He's like one command and that guy's gone, like just with an arrow, and it's kind of like that where he's like, then what? But then your life can be, well, then it's forfeited. It's same thing. It's just, I just feel like he was always under a shadow. It's just even
Yeah,
though his dad in the end really, oh no, and
like that was a
just but
terrible dad.
oh he was
That
yeah, but
there's no redemption of that. Actually, his
no,
death was sort of just his own cause. So
oh yeah,
they tried
yeah,
to have that little moment where he's just like, oh, he cares about his son. It's like not really.
there's no way. We all
That
know that.
I
I
mean,
mean,
he's remorseful in death. So
yeah,
that's one thing. But like the reality is that if he really cared about his son like that, he would not have been acting the way he did when he first thought his son died. You know,
right, yeah,
it doesn't. It's sort of part of this whole. So his father has this whole sort of ego selfishness thing going on because you saw
oh
it with
yeah,
Boromir in the movies as well,
mm-hmm,
especially the
yep,
extended cut, where his son was an extension of himself. He wasn't just his son.
right.
Just like with Faramir, Faramir was this aspect of himself that he didn't want to deal with because Boromir was his best version that he wanted to promote.
Right,
So
right. And that's why I felt like he's in the shadow. He wasn't accepted, and he knows that. And I don't know. And I understand why he's your favorite. I mean, he's a great character. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, Return of the King. I love that film as well. I love Two Towers the best.
well, I
I
definitely
love the
understand
fight
why. The
scene.
Helm's Deep scene is probably,
Yeah, Helm's Deep's my favorite
other
scene.
than Helm's
That's
Deep as a
that's
castle
you
being
know.
utterly terribly designed. But
Oh,
yes,
yeah, yeah, no, no, no. But I just love it's at night, it's rainy, it's everything you want. And then the elves come, and it's, everybody, like, it's just, and it was horribly designed because it's like, okay, so let me get this straight. You have at the bottom a little place where a guy can literally take a,
that's not a problem. The problem, so here's the thing.
well,
A
it
lot
looked
of
like a weakness to
No,
me,
no, no.
but
But that's normal with castles, period. So that's not a
okay,
problem. The issue with Helm's Deep is not the fact that there was a drain in the wall. That's completely normal, actually, when it comes to castles. There's always a weak point somewhere. All right, you have to sacrifice because also you're building in the
so
environment
so
that you're in.
you do agree it is a weak point, but
Yes,
I
but
will
also
say
the gate is a weak point. Like
well, yes.
because here's the thing: the drain was fortified itself too. So when you look at that drain in that movie, it's it's small. It's got
Hmm.
iron bars on it, so it's not like you can just like go up and go through it. All right, we're also
Right.
talking about technology that has not been seen before in the shape of gunpowder. All right, the actual problem with Helm's Deep design is not the drain, is the fortifications of the actual castle. So there's no meticulations on it, which is okay. That's fine. That is technically part of historical castles, but there's definitely would be meticulations in the keep area of the
Mm.
fortress. The defenses of the walls, you see it in the movie, are too low, so archers can pinpoint accuracy against the defenders, which is so stupid.
Right. Right.
There is no offhang to the wall, so there's no way of making sure that they can't just immediately climb straight up the wall.
Right,
And
right.
it's just
That
the whole thing looks like it was designed by somebody who doesn't understand castles. All right,
well the yeah,
the drain is just part of what they had to deal with in building the castle in an environment like the mountains, because historical castles are built in a way that you have to adjust depending upon the environment. So if there's a drain, that's mainly so that the fortress doesn't flood. It has to happen. Now, personally, yes, maybe, they should have done this in the sense of like, okay, maybe we should have dug a trench or a sewer system or something.
yeah,
But
put it like
this is
inside the
also,
mountain,
yeah, but this is also a fortress that's old. So,
True.
and that's why I sort of forgive it when the things that it doesn't have articulations or even has an overhang so that defenders can't climb straight up. But the fact that the defenses are so low that crossbowers can hit elves in the face without even trying, that is a problem in
Yeah.
castle design, period, regardless of what age you're in. Because every single castle, even when the most simplest ones and the most historical ones that don't seem to be that well designed, have basic defenses like that, and Helm's Deep doesn't, and it pisses me off. Like the idea, like there was a scene where the ballista launches and it scrapes a guy and hits him, and they're both flying. Like in an actual castle, that fortification would not allow that to happen. Even a
Hmm.
very basic and unproductive design still would have prevented that.
Right,
So
right,
it's just one of those things where it's like it's Hollywood instead of actual practical design. And
right.
again, that's fine. It's whatever. It's a fantasy story. No one cares about it. But it's just one of those things where, like, when I watch through that movie as an adult, like, that's what I'm seeing when I watch that. Whereas, something like Minas Tirith is far more enjoyable as far as the designed city,
Hmm.
because there's multiple layers that they have to combat through. Each and every layer has its choke points. Each and every layer has gates that the defenders like. Minas Tirith, even in the books, it's even more hardcore. But in the movies, like Minas Tirith is almost impregnable in the sense of what Mordor would have to do to actually take the city. And you see it, like it's taking them a long time to take to that city, even in movie time, to a point where like they're not even at the upper levels yet by the time the Rohirrim
Right,
come in. You can see that
right.
they're like I think on
Yeah.
like the first two, maybe the third level, and Minas Tirith has like 6 or 7. So like the
Yeah.
fortress itself is the city itself is actually well designed and in the movie perspective. The only problems with the movies overall on that front is that there's no farms outside the cities where there would be. Because Pelennor Fields, it's actual fields of crops that they should be having there. Same thing with Edoras. Like that's great that Edoras is this well designed, simple, well designed wooden fortress. Where are the farms? Where is the society that would be living there? And
Right.
that's just my critique on just Hollywood in general. Other than that, I definitely see why Two Towers would be your favorite out of the three, because it has the biggest, most epic fight. Because even Minas Tirith is not that big compared
Right.
to the build up that Helm's Deep had and the impact emotionally that that battle was going through. Whereas Minas Tirith has more action, but it's not the same emotional beats.
Right. I mean, my favorite character, I go back and forth. My favorite character is uh is Theoden. That's my favorite. He's that's my guy.
Yeah.
It's just, but at the same time I understand what you mean by the design flaw of Helm's Deep, where it's just like even the way it's designed, where you go, if you're looking from it up above, it's kind of that half, um what is it, octagon or whatever, where it's just kind of the you have those two sides on the a right side and a left side, and it's like just that main side. But again, it's the same thing where it's like, oh yeah, they can do ladders, they can do that. It's I don't know. It just they should have made it a
The
lot taller,
Well,
and then
the problem with Helm's Deep, and this may be just Tolkien in general, is that the problem with Helm's Deep is that you would actually not be having a wall that long without having sections of it built to a point where if they took one part of the wall, they didn't take the whole wall. You know,
Right, right. Yeah,
that's a flaw I think in Tolkien's thought,
yeah.
where
Or yeah.
it's, and again, this could be a Hollywood thing because I don't remember how it was described in the books. But so let's say that Tolkien had it to where it was just one big wall thing that he was doing. That
Hmm.
that doesn't make sense in castle design because
Mm.
the best thing about castles is that you can defend them with a few amount of people. That's the point. So Helm's
Mm.
Deep, lore wise, it makes sense why Helm's Deep would never be successfully breached because it's a very well built, solid fortress. But the Great Wall sort of contradicts that in the sense of, well, you need a whole bunch of people to man that wall. You saw it in the film itself. It's like, well, they don't have enough people to man the wall. In a real castle, that wouldn't be a problem because you would only
Hmm.
need you would only need a few people per section to honestly defend that situation if you were so low on men. It's happened before. You saw it. There's even movies that even went off on it. So Ironclad was one of those movies where it's like, all right, you have 12 people holding down a whole castle against 1,000 troops. Like that actually can happen if
Yeah,
the
if
fortress
you
is designed well enough.
and you position them in the right
Yeah,
place.
because
Yeah,
that's the whole purpose of a fortress is that you're able to defend your territory with as few men as possible.
right, right. And yeah, so um yeah, so that's my big thing is I mean, I don't know. That was my I yeah, I can see why it's why you like that whole franchise. And I always, I love that franchise too. I love The Hobbit as well. That whole series is just I like it.
I can't
Uh,
stand it.
I can see how it maybe would be a little bit
You took a
t-
book that was like,
and you're saying and you ruined it,
well, it's not even
right?
that. It's like they had to come up with so much subplots to make that three
Yeah.
movies. Like you could have just made it one solid movie and that
N-
would have been it. And people would have
Now,
loved it. But
but
no,
I
you had to
want
make it
yeah,
into a trilogy because there was a trilogy before it.
right. Yeah. Now there was one part in that whole thing. I'm trying to. What's it? Um, hold on. I'm trying to think of where it was. I was with the dragon, I think it was. And why can't I think of his name?
Smog,
Not not the dragon. It's um,
the captain of Dale, pretty much.
yeah, the main leader in the whole like the Hobbit like their group the Hobbits like the main I forgot his name I'm blanking um
The
Thorin
Thorin, yeah.
yeah um so when he kind of gets that greed and this is my gold it's all mine and it's and he's just that completely it just bored me. I can't stand that part of just that one film of where you just see him literally in nothing but greed. This is my gold, all mine, and I'm not even gonna. And then it's like, oh, you guys are trying to take this from me, and he's blind because he's so just filled with greed at that point, and he can't realize. He doesn't realize what's going on, and he doesn't realize he's literally being manipulated by, just sheer greed. And
Well, I think the
uh,
reason why that took us out of the film was because throughout the other two movies, he was being built as this noble, imperfect but noble person. So, like,
right,
even if he
I just
was like
yeah.
obsessed with the gold in his thing, he wouldn't be closed off to the conflict outside. He would still be involved, and I think that's what took us out of it.
But
Because,
also like even his group, who he led, and it's just like even that he would literally pretty much like cast off his entire group, but Bilbo, and literally just oh well you're the only one I can trust. These guys want to take everything, and it's just I just didn't care for it. I mean
well, it
it's
just wasn't. It just wasn't. So it just the whole thing was contradictory to how they built Thorin up, because even in Thorin's imperfections, throughout the other movies. Like he still has the good intention behind it, whereas this is just there's no good intention at all. It's just like you said, it's
Right.
just greed. But what they should have done was sort of how I would have reworked that was sort of make it to where no, this is our gold kind of deal. So then you can
Right.
maintain that whole he's going mad with greed, but it's not him alone. He's thinking, "Oh, this is for the dwarven people. This is for my dwarven kin.
Right.
I'm not letting anybody come in here. I'm not letting elves come in here. I'm not letting orcs come in here. And the people and the soldiers outside are there to defend our heritage, our
Right.
treasure."
Right.
So that
And that's what I wish they did.
yeah, because I think even in the book there he does get greedy and goes into dragon madness, supposedly,
Mm.
but I don't remember what if it was just him as an individual or if the whole group had it or not,
Yeah, that's
because
what I was going to ask you because
it's
it's
been a
been a while since
long
I've read
time
the
since I read
books,
it. Yeah.
and it's I don't know how far I got into it with the books. I know I've the movies kind of they've passed where I was in the books because I didn't finish wherever I was, whatever book I was on.
I will say this,
Um,
the whole subplots that aren't in the books are the ones that infuriate me the most, especially the ones where you have the elf falling in love with the dwarf. That was completely
yeah.
unnecessary and not needed at all.
Well, that was so extra. It was extra. Um, so, but my question to you was that greed was in the book,
Yes,
somewhat.
because it was called dragon sickness.
Okay.
Because dragons in Tolkien's Legendarium are they're the personification of selfishness.
Mm,
So like they're evil, but they're evil in a way that is so they'll like Smog Dig, they'll take over an area and just keep it all to themselves. They'll be hoarders, they'll
right.
be and they only do things when it serves them personally.
Right.
So they're the ultimate personification of selfishness. And that's why dragons are evil in Tolkien's Legendarium because there's no good dragon. They were all made by Melkor or corrupted and made by Melkor or something like that. So
Right. Now, what do you think about was it Azog or whatever?
so
Like the main,
Azog is
you
not
know?
I didn't it's his name's Azog, I believe.
Okay.
But I was not turned off by that plot point. I just thought it was so I don't know. I feel like the whole army out of Angmar thing was kind of
Extra.
it was extra, but it was also not at all needed. So Angmar is explained in the Fellowship of the Ring. So
Oh.
that's where Gandalf like they have this whole long area of dialogue where Gandalf explains the Witch King and his story with Angmar. And the thing is that because the riders are coming to get them at that point, and Gandalf is explaining to Frodo who they are and who the Witch
Mm,
King is, their leader. So that's where we learned all about Angmar. But in the actual Hobbit verse and everything, it's like no, Angmar would. Do you know how far away Angmar is to the
I
Lonely Mountain? Like,
no.
think about this. Their entire time crossing to Mirkwood, Angmar is 3 to 5 times further away from the Lonely Mountain than Mirkwood is.
So you're saying they're putting up more of an effort, like why would they be out that far doing
Yes.
this when it's like it doesn't make any sense as far as distance goes to be that far away from your
Yeah,
like
because what would make more sense would be something like, oh, and I think this is actually what happened in the books or something like that, where the Goblin King and the goblins were the ones chasing them, and that's what led to the Battle of the Five Armies. So you had the
mm,
goblins or whatever those orcs
yeah,
were coming to wreak revenge for their king or something like that. I'm probably wrong on that, but that to
yeah. I
me
mean,
makes more sense than oh it's Angmar and Azog who wants
yeah,
revenge. It's like no that doesn't have a solid build up because they're trying to tie everything to the Lord of the Rings, and the reality is that the Hobbit is not a setup for the Lord of the Rings. What the Hobbit is its own adventure story.
yeah.
So
But
it just so
it's it
happens that the One Ring is there.
not only that, but there's that what is it? The like the lineage or whatever from Bilbo to, where it's like it's family. So it's also that tie as well. But the goblin, that whole I understand what you're saying about that because they kind of did that just a little bit in the film where it's like they killed the Goblin King and then they all literally just went after him and attacked him,
Which I
and
don't
then we
even
see,
think the Goblin King dies
he
in
does.
the books.
Oh, you mean the books? Okay,
Because I could be wrong on that too. Again, it's been a long time since I read them on that.
right.
But
But I mean, they did kind of tie in. I could see what you're saying about how they, they did maybe in the book they had more of that going on. So I mean, at least Peter Jackson, at least he put a little bit of it in there, but it wasn't to a point of like I understand what you're saying as far as I don't know like map wise and distance of with
so all
just
right,
how far they were
all right.
from
So
and
do you
literally
remember? Do you at least remember vaguely what the map of Middle Earth looks like?
yeah, vaguely,
Okay,
yeah,
so you have Mordor at the bottom right, you have Gondor
right,
towards the left of it, you have Rohan just a little bit in the pass between the mountains, and then you have the Lonely Mountain on the top right.
yeah,
So Angmar is on the opposite side of the map, in the north, right above Rivendell.
okay,
It takes it would take just as long for those forces to get to the Lonely Mountain as Frodo would to get to Gondor.
right,
That's how long it did. And then because they try to have this idea of like worms building tunnels, like all right, great. I
yeah, that was yeah,
like all right, fine, whatever. But it was just like the whole Azog thing. It's
creative,
not that it was bad. It's just I feel like they built it in a way that didn't make sense to the actual story that you're trying to tell. Whereas
right,
the
right,
whole like so like take for instance Azog is this you still can have Azog and his orcs, but like they're with the Goblin King or they're associated with the Goblin King and they're hiding out in Mirkwood because well guess what, Sauron's fortress is still in Mirkwood, so maybe they're garrisoning it or maybe they're still involved in it in some extent. And
hmm
so he sees the opportunity to get revenge on Thor, and then after the Goblin King dies, he takes over those forces and goes after them to the Lonely Mountain. That makes far more sense to me
yeah,
thematically than, oh, he's building an army in Angmar, which, by the way, already had multiple wars and generation of wars to get rid of an army there. So definitely men and elves would have noticed if there's forces being built. Like it's.
I understand, yeah,
So
I mean,
now, granted, I'm criticizing a movie based upon lore that's not related to the cinematic universe, but even still, like, just sheer geography ruins that for me outright.
right,
Because all of that legit could have been handled a lot differently. And also with the subplot of Gandalf, like, fighting Sauron in Dol Guldur, it's like, no, 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 no. They didn't even know Dol Guldur was being rebuilt until after it was already finished and they were fighting the war. Like, we're talking like the orcs would have had that a lot more built up by now for them to go in there. Because Dol Guldur was an active fortress during the War of the Ring.
right,
So,
uh, right. Now, I do want to get on to what's your I guess what third favorite film, or if you want to just
oh,
stick on the same franchise, I don't want to,
third favorite. So, first one was Emperor's New Groove, will always be my favorite. Then it was
Mhm.
Lord of the Rings movies. So, I think. I would have to say, you see, I'm torn because I want to say the first few Narnia films were great for me. That was a good childhood reliving. But
Yeah.
I would actually probably, ah, man, this is hard. Um, I would probably have to say my next favorite movie would be Saving Private Ryan after that.
Oh,
Because well I loved world I still love World War II history, but I loved World War II history growing up. It was one of my favorite things to study. And Saving Private Ryan was just always there because it came out when I was a young kid. and
Yep.
I've been totally because my normal number three slot is Star Wars, but I've been so
Yeah.
disappointed with all of that
Yep.
to a point where I can't even count it in my top 10 anymore
Yeah,
because
you've
they've messed
lost.
it up
Yeah.
so like Star Wars as like episodic shows are fantastic because they have time to go into
Hmm.
everything. But like on the movies, I don't know what Disney did or what Lucas did, but like they mess Star Wars up to an extent where they're trying to put too much happening into it instead of just sticking to a simple story, which is what made Star Wars good in the first place. Because like the first original trilogy wasn't good because it was well written. It was good because it was the same formula but placed in a new setting.
Hmm.
That's why it was good. Same thing with Star Trek. It wasn't Star Trek wasn't this big revolutionary concept. No, it's freaking sailing the seas, but in space.
Right. And you have like different factions and
Yeah.
civilizations, things like that, and creatures you come across.
Yeah,
But it's
it's not a new concept. So it's not they're not successful because they did anything new. They're successful because they put it in a new setting. That was it. So
I
and
mean,
so Star Wars was always third place to me. It actually used to be first place, but then the prequels put it into third place, and then with what Disney did, I'd have to say I brought it out of my top 10 entirely, if I even have a top 10. Because honestly, I think more of games than I do movies. Because again, you're more of the cinephile than I am, Eric. But for my listing on this, so Spencer's favorite list is going to be New Groove, Lord of the Rings, and then Saving Private Ryan, with the asterisk of World War II stuff in general,
yeah,
because that's my favorite era of history,
yeah,
personally. Because there's so much, and Saving Private Ryan sort of goes into that. There's so much stuff that happened just even on the day to day that you just got to sit back and be like, whoa, this is
hmm,
intense. And
yeah,
as serious
yeah,
movies go, I think World War II is the perfect thing to have serious movies for because there's so much different things that's still relevant that are still relevant to us today that really, really makes me want to just sit down and watch it. Because like even with what happened recently with Call of Duty Vanguard, which was terrible by the way, but even in those movies, there's always a plot line you can have that's relevant to the overall conflict, and that's the wonderful thing about World War II in the sense of storytelling is that it can always relate to the overall conflict of the war. All right, there's no escaping that, and it's the best thing about it is because like you can have a subplot of a mother and a daughter trying to make it through World War II. You can have a subplot of Jews trying to get out of Germany. You can always have the subplot of even the enemy, like with Letters from Iwo Jima, which is also one of my favorite movies.
mm,
So it's where you get to explore the Japanese perspective of the conflict. And it's just like there's so World War II is one of those wars where it was so horrible that it speaks to every part of human experience. And that's ironically the best thing about World War II is that there's always a story you can go into and be like, wow, that was amazingly terrifying. So
yeah,
and it relates so much like people really underestimate how much our history is still related to that conflict. All right, we're still dealing with the ramifications of the Soviet Union. We're still dealing with the ramifications of a broken Europe. We're still dealing with the ramifications of Japan. Like Japan not even admitting its war crimes still. Like that's the reason why South Korea still has a problem with Japan because like you guys are not admitting to the terrible things you've done and you're not trying to do right by us, you know. And that's what brings conflict with China because like it set that whole war set up a paradigm for the globe that's still being affected 80 years later and will probably still be affecting it a century or two from now. So that's why I like this movie is because you get to explore all that.
right.
So it's Saving Private Ryan, asterisk of World War II movies in general that are good, not just knockoff crap like people tend to be doing nowadays. The only thing I'd have to say though is that I think the only movie that I think might replace Saving Private Ryan in number three would be Inglourious Bastards, was because that movie is just fun.
I've never seen it.
You've never seen Inglourious Bastards, Eric? We have
Mm-mm.
got to sit down and make you watch this.
No, I've never like I have like it's one of those films like I can see why everybody like how uh me once why am I
Like,
blanking
so
on his name?
Inglourious Bastards is exactly what Vanguard should have been. it,
Right.
it's you're hunting Nazis, you're killing them in creative ways, and then on top of that, you're behind enemy lines doing all this cool stuff, and it's just Now, granted, it's a Quentin Tarantino movie, so like it makes no sense on the ending. Because not to spoil this for anybody, even though I don't think really spoilers apply for this movie anymore. But like Inglourious Bastards, it ends with like them killing Hitler, blowing themselves up as suicide bombers in a theater, killing the entire hierarchy of the Nazi command, and I'm just like, whoa. And the movie's still going. All right. So it's just one of those things that are just like really, it's a fun movie, and that's why I like it. But it doesn't get number three because it's not accurate. It's just a fun World War II movie theme.
Right. I mean it's also I'm trying to blanking on this one. It's with what is it out the we'll look it up. Valkyrie. That one. That's
Yeah.
that was a good that was a good film, but I'm just like if you know the story, like I knew the story before I saw that film, so I knew it would like evident like what would happen. I'm like, oh, if you only did this,
Yeah.
and yet he was not even there, and it's or left or whatever it was. But it was just I don't know. It's one of those frustrating times. I'm like, oh, you idiots.
Well,
But
it's
yeah,
it's so I don't know. I kind of debate in my head whether Operation Valkyrie would have been a success or not if Hitler was killed or not. And the reason why I am skeptical that it would have made a difference is because yeah, it would have made a difference in who's in charge, but the reality is that so after Hitler committed suicide and Berlin was taken by the Soviets, you had SS divisions going around fighting against all the invaders of Germany at that time. And that's why you have the whole incident at Eiffel Castle or something like that, where you had the regular German army fighting with the American forces against the SS. So the
mhm,
leadership would not have changed too much. It would have just gone to the next radical person in charge. So
right.
I debate whether that would have been actually. So maybe, you know, something like Germany capitulating earlier might have happened because you didn't have Hitler keeping people riled up for the war. But I don't know. I believe Germany was kind of too far gone in its soul at that time to have Hitler be cut off and then things go back to something sanity. It's like, no, we're talking about National Socialist here, all right? Just like with anything on the left side of the spectrum, like these people are radical, they don't make sense, they're illogical, and it it's not because like we're dealing with people who went past being liberal
Hmm.
and just went straight into toxic ideology. All right, it's the same thing with the alt right, where it's like at some point there's a cutoff between sanity and insanity. All right, and Germany went full insane when they decided that the National Socialist was what was going to be best for Germany, and then after that the war was inevitable. So, and it had mainly to do with because like a lot of people think that like Operation Valkyrie might have solved a lot of problems, but I don't. I really sincerely doubt that because number one, you always have, you know, second in commands for reason, but even the sense of like wiping out the German hierarchy in general is that well then what you have then is just this chaotic mess of civil conflict within the German army itself. So then you have wars on two fronts, and then war inside Germany, making the situation even worse because then both sides have to be fighting against essentially two different armies that are not going to capitulate to anyone.
Right.
So I don't know. I'm like I think the movie is fantastic, don't get me wrong, but like the whole idea of Operation Valkyrie just I mean, yes, I
Yeah.
would have liked it to succeed, obviously, but it's not one of those things that I think would have made much of a difference at that point in time. Because it was the fear that Germany was losing the war that prompted them to do that. Because Operation Valkyrie happened after. Did it happen after the invasion of Normandy?
Oh yeah, I believe so.
Yeah. So the war was technically over at that point. Because all the Germans were doing was having a fighting retreat throughout the whole time. Because once the Soviets were able to get their war machine going and approach from the Eastern Front, the Western Front was all that they needed in order to make sure to keep the push going. So after the invasion of Normandy, Germany technically would have lost the war regardless. So I think what was going on as a motivation for the conspirators were to let's get rid of Hitler so we can negotiate with the West so that we can actually keep our country before the Soviets destroy everything. I think
Right.
that was part of the motivation. I have to look into it again because I watched a documentary on it that said something similar to that.
Hmm.
I just can't remember where I saw it,
I
but
mean, I've seen a lot of documentaries on that stuff from what you call it, the just History Channel, things like that.
yeah,
But the film that I think you may have already seen it. I know I've talked about it at some point to either you or Cody or just one of our podcasts, possibly. The Zookeeper's Wife.
I have not seen it.
It is really good. It's all about the it's all about a zoo in Poland, um that literally the Warsaw, it's Warsaw, Poland is where it takes place.
Oh, jeez, that's bad.
Yeah, yeah. And it's amazing how it's called the Zookeeper's Wife, and they have a zoo. But when's up
No,
what?
they have a zoo and the zookeepers. I'm just joking.
No, they have a zoo, and like it's called the Zookeeper's Wife, and the family that owns the zoo, the Nazis literally come and they make their base operations the zoo, and they take all those animals, experiment on those animals, take all those animals away, and it's literally a zoo full of Jews, and they have no clue
Yeah,
that below them is pretty much, it's kind of like the Anne Frank, kind of like hiding Jews, but
yeah,
instead of like animals, it's Jews in the zoo, like
yeah.
below their feet. So by day, the Nazi base. By night, the Jews come out and they're fine because the Nazis are somehow they leave at night. Um, but anyways, it's a great film. It's
I'll
it's
have to
an
look into it.
amazing film.
I'll
Yeah,
have to.
I think you'd enjoy it.
Oh, I know I would. So, and that's why World War II was always number three on the category of movies I like because there's not a single World War II movie that's made well that I dislike. Even
Yeah.
even Enigma with the whole
Oh,
code
and
cracking
oh,
thing,
yeah, Enigma
like,
was great.
and especially because like it's one of those things where like I don't agree with this person, but
I
like
don't
the
I don't agree with
movie
his.
is so
Yeah,
good
it
in
is. It
explaining
is.
who he is,
Right. And
and
I've read a
it's
lot of history on him as well, to where it's like, um yeah, just everything that went inside that film. And I did so much research on how Enigma won that. How it was because of that whole thing, which is why you were able to win. But also the
well,
fact that,
the thing is though
um,
is that so yes, you had the Enigma machine. But here's the
right,
thing: the reason why Enigma was able to help win the war was not because it figured out everything in the German code, was because the Allies captured a German sub with the encoder.
Right.
that
Yeah.
actually was the real solution to uh, the German encryption. So,
Right.
but what Enigma did was that it actually helped crack the code enough to where the Allies could start saving their troops and start pinpointing German action enough so that they can start turning the tide. It wasn't until the actual encoder was found and
That,
decoded by, was it the Americans who got it, or I don't know, but the Allies captured a German sub, got the encoder, and then that's when we were able to tap into all German communications, and that's what
right.
really helped us turn, at least accelerate the end of the war. Because
Right.
I'm sure Enigma figured things out, but I know for a fact they didn't figure everything out, because that's why the encoder was so important when we found it, because it
Right.
opened up everything to the German intelligence.
Right. And yeah, and I know that Alan Turing was the main, like, without that just sheer brains and brilliance with him. It's just, I mean, he was a huge part of it, and it's unfortunate. And I don't know, I don't want to get into. I'm gonna leave that out of the podcast at this one point. Um, but it was another thing of Bletchley Park where the women they needed people that were good at decrypting codes, and men were out fighting the war, so they had thought that there was this they were getting these codes back from, I don't know, what is it, dead soldiers or whatever. They were bringing them in, and they had to hire women to decrypt these codes. And
Yeah.
I don't know how it won. It was a pretty pivotal, or I don't know how, but
Well,
it won
so the
some
Allies set up a lot
part.
of
But
teams like that
yeah.
throughout World War II, and that's mainly because just of sheer, like we were saying, just like sheer necessity, they needed to be incorporating more civilian workforce, and the only real civilian workforce was women at the time. So you
Right.
see, it's actually one of the things that led to the expansion of women's rights in the Western world was because you had women suddenly filling all these roles that men were supposed to fill because the men were going out and fighting. So
Right.
it's
Right.
all the Allied nations built up teams of women for, at the very least, documentation, if not outright intelligence. And
Right.
you even see that in Saving Private Ryan, where you have this whole room of secretaries dealing with basic paperwork, but like they're still involved in data collection. They're still involved
Right.
in making sure things are taken down, and everything. And you see this predominantly in most actual World War II mediums that women actually start playing predominant roles in intelligence gathering
Yep.
because they're able to fill data collection easily. And that
Right.
you
And
you even see it
yeah.
in German offices too. It's like there's women up in high command. They might not be making decisions, but like they're there with that information that would have otherwise they never would have been there before.
Right. And that's kind of the big thing with even the zookeeper's wife, where she starts to um kind of, I mean, you know how they are, where it's like you could kind of use your, kind of, not sexual prowess, but it's like she kind of tricks this Nazi. um it was like he was like Hitler's right hand guy with just animals and just everything, and how she kind of seduced him and tricked him into literally kind of, uh what is it, kind of distracting him from what they were actually doing at the zoo. So she was kind of just this crucial just piece in the puzzle of just distracting this guy from the actual thing, because he was, I mean, he really, he was interested in her. And it was just an interesting way of just also how they could kind of, you could get certain things. You could kind of, with from them, you could, so I mean, I don't know, you pass out later at night, and then they leave the hotel room or whatever, and they have that piece of, maybe they found something in the guy's jacket or whatever.
Well,
That's
that's
intelligence.
well, yeah, because I know the French Resistance did things like that as well, to where
Yeah.
they would try to get intelligence any way they could to help the Allies. So
Right.
you have, because the French Resistance, I think, needs to have a lot more movies on them because there's a
Right.
lot of interesting things that happen with them. But yeah, so and first of all, it's like why are we? People should not be surprised that women have been spies from the get go. Number one.
No, I
Women
just feel
throughout
like,
all of history have been spies. This is not a
right.
new thing. All right,
Right.
it's just easier to talk about it in World War II setting because it's more applicable to our modern day sensibilities of what the situation is. But
Right.
yeah, so it's one of those awesome, and that's why I say World War II is the best era for making films on, is because there's always angles like that you could do where it's like, all right, well, we can have a modern feminist liberation film in World War II and have it make
Hmm.
sense. We can have,
Yeah.
you know, female resistance fighters. I think Defiance was one of the few movies where you had like normal civilians, especially women, take up machine guns against Germans, and it's like
Right.
this is
And
awesome.
it's right, and it's at
And
least
that
yeah,
that's the kind of history that makes good movies, and
right,
that's why it'll always be my favorite. But
right.
I think we have hit the end of our podcast time for tonight.
Yeah, I wanted to conclude that with I would like to see a film kind of based on Bletchley. I know there's a ton of documentaries, but it'd be great if there was some sort of feature film that told that side because it is a critical side of the war as well. The other thing is also Ford and a lot of those car manufacturers also contributed. They started making
Yeah, like Volkswagen
tanks.
was actually
Yeah,
started by the Nazis. Yeah,
yeah.
and
Okay.
everyone
Well,
forgets that history.
I mean, my point is, if you kind of look at it, Ford was tasked by they were asked from literally by the government to stop making automobiles and start making tanks,
Yeah,
and it sucked at first. And it's interesting how they also were a huge important role of winning that as well, just with the stuff they made. But anyways, that's all I wanted to say. Of just I mean,
there
we could
will
have a
at
whole
some point.
podcast on that, but
There will be
yeah,
at some point, but that only time will tell when we get to see that. So
yeah. But anyways, so that's that was a good. We had some good points, really good discussion. Um, you know,
yeah,
And yeah, I think both of us have pretty good listing of the top films. I mean, I could have said The Martian in there. I could have said Gravity,
Eric, we didn't stop streaming though.
Oh, I know, but
All
I'm
right,
just saying those are some of my other films in my top 10. But yeah, it's
gotcha.
mostly space and all that stuff. But
Oh, definitely with all of that.
yeah,
But anyways, though, I'm going to go ahead and clock off tonight. I want to thank everybody who did drop in on the stream. We had a few people come in, which was nice. And until next time, I pray you all have a safe and wonderful holiday. I don't know when we're going to be doing this again. This was our first live Twitch. I want to get this going on a regular basis, especially in starting in January. But for right now, we're just sort of taking things as we can, and we'll see you all soon. And until next time, peace.